Hello, I haven't had a political take in a long while, and I think I need to have one, and it has to do with the minimum wage. The minimum wage, folks, is not enough for our society. It isn't. It isn't enough. I mean, the $15 minimum wage is not enough. So rejecting that is really disappointing because here's the bottom line. What the progressive Democrats are saying is that we need jobs that produce a livable wage because people need bare necessities. And if a job cannot produce a livable wage, at least a minimum wage, at least a livable wage, that job is not productive. That job will lead to starvation. That job will lead to homelessness. It's just that simple. If you don't have a livable wage, that is what it's going to lead to. But we must go further than that. See, you shouldn't have to work for somebody else in order to get the bare necessities for survival. Again, you shouldn't have to work for someone else for money to exchange for bare necessities for survival. Period. I don't care if you don't like it, too bad. It is immoral to set up a society where some people have to work to get bare necessities for survival. Some people have to work for somebody else. See, there's work. I don't mind work. I don't mind being dependent on work to survive. I mind being dependent on working for somebody else in exchange for money to get bare necessities for survival. There's no tribal society that's built this way. I don't believe, or there's many tribal societies that are not built this way. Tribal societies, we call ourselves the advanced country of the world. We have all this so-called wisdom or whatever, and yet society's not as advanced as us. You don't have that problem. In an industrialized society where you have enough resources where people can get the bare minimum of resources that are necessary for survival, in this industrialized society, we say, nah, you must work for somebody else, and you may not even get the bare necessities for survival. You may have to work 80 hours for you to get the bare necessities for survival, and some people are okay with it because that's just how it has to be. No, it isn't how it has to be. That's how you have fooled yourself into believing it has to be. Now, I'm not one of those people. I'm lucky. I have support. But other people aren't as lucky. It is up to them to work 40 hours, 60 hours, 80 hours just to survive, just to get enough material resources for survival. And I'm sorry, folks. This is a problem in all the economic systems. So it's whether you're communist, socialist, or capitalist, it's a problem because if you have poor people who are homeless and they're starving, your economic system didn't do its job, or how you operated your economic system. So I'm not really concerned about holding the socialist or Marxist viewpoint. I'm interested in eradicating poverty, and capitalism hasn't done that. Capitalism hasn't done it. You can argue that socialism hasn't done it. You can argue that communism hasn't done it. But until you eradicate poverty, until you eradicate hunger, your system, how you practiced it, failed. So if a capitalist could come up with their idea of how you can have people have basic resources that are necessary for survival that do not require working for somebody else, then they can have their capitalism. Perhaps. Because that's one of the big problems with capitalism, folks. And I point at capitalism because I live in a capitalist society. But again, capitalists, don't think that I'm so beholden to Marxism and just taking everything from the. This has nothing to do with taking away. You do not deserve any more from a human standpoint. You do not deserve any more than the bare necessities or the necessary sufficient material resources for survival. You need sufficient resources for survival. If you have an excess of resources, like in excess of food, excess of clothing, excess of shelter, and it's not necessary for survival, I'm not going to let the other person starve because it's quote unquote your property, Ben Shapiro. That's just not how it's going to work. We're not going to justify starving over your material, your personal property rights.